Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Today is one of the final episodes we'll be doing of the weekly review series. There are some changes planned there. I'll let you know more about that once it's 100% confirmed. Didn't do one of these last week. There wasn't much news. Not much has changed. To be honest, I only got a couple of bits for you, but then I've got my top 10 wide receivers currently in the NFL list, which is, I think, a pretty interesting one, probably the most interesting of the bunch. So we'll hop right into the news this week. So last week it was revealed David Irving of the Cowboys was going to be suspended for 4 games. This hurts them. I've been on record many times saying I'm very concerned about the Cowboys' defence in general, in particular with their ability to stop opposing teams' passing games. Their secondary is pretty much brand new. The defensive line doesn't really have any stars on it. Irving, I think, was probably going to be one of the favourites to be, if not a starter, heavily involved in the rotation, was one of their better pass rushers last year. He'll be missing the first month. This could end up hurting a team that's already struggling at that position. I don't know what it is with all these Cowboys defensive ends getting suspended over the last couple of years. It's absolutely bizarre. But this is really bad news for the team. It's bad news for the player, of course, with the sort of rolling, increasing suspensions. I think teams are always going to be cautious unless you're an absolute star. It's going to be significantly harder to, be relied upon by a team, particularly, when it comes to free agency. You only kind of have to look at Le'Veon Bell. He's going to have to be on his best behaviour as a good example. I think the Steelers have been very cautious about paying him the money he definitely deserves, but it is a big risk. And a team that just is going to struggle for pass rush anyway. I think even with Irving in the fold, this just means they've got 4 games with an even lesser rush. It may not have a huge impact on their season overall, but if it causes them to even drop a couple of games, that could end up being significant, particularly in terms of seeding and even winning the division, as I think the NFC East is going to be a tougher challenge for the Cowboys this season than last. Next up, just a couple of bits of contract talk, really. Jarvis Landry of the Dolphins, he wants to get a deal done before the season. This is a bit of a tough one because I don't know where the Dolphins necessarily look to come up with a contract for him. He's a very good player, by far their most reliable weapon in the passing game, but he's not a massive play guy at this point in his career. He's between the numbers, volume, run after the catch type of player, a traditional slot player. I expect to see him used more down the field next season. Adam Gase has come out and said that is going to be part of the plan. But as a result, I think it's very difficult to pay him in that upper echelon of players. He certainly, the numbers don't lie. His role has been what it is, racking up short yardage catches, turning them into intermediate gains. But I don't know if they want to invest in him like you would in, an Odell Beckham or a Mike Evans, a true number one. Those guys have contracts coming up. I'm not sure what kind of range you necessarily look at for Landry. There's just no one really comparable. I mean, the Patriots receivers that I guess do that, when you're looking at the top slot receivers in the league, they're on these lessened contracts but that they choose to take to stay with the franchise. If Landry wants to get paid, I think this could end up being a situation that drags. The team, I think, have to pay him. He's been one of the leaders there. He sets a great example. And, he's the kind of player you just want in your locker room and on the field on Sunday. So they need to do something. I think something along kind of lines of what maybe a guy like Deshaun Jackson signed with the Buccaneers, maybe 10, 11 million a year. It is fair or maybe reasonable as a blueprint, but I'm sure he's going to probably have his agent push him for more than that. So it's a bit of a difficult one. They need to get it done. I'll be very critical of him if they don't, because he'll probably just end up playing for the Patriots and killing them every year, as is often the way. But yeah, it's certainly a tricky situation. Similarly, Aaron Donald has still not been signed. The Rams have to get on this. You can make a legitimate argument, and I would be behind you on that argument, unless JJ Watt comes back in the JJ Watt we saw for his 2 previous healthy seasons. I'm of the opinion this is the best defensive player in football. He's in his prime. He's been absurdly productive from day one, and you can't replace that. This is a team that's got a lot of problems. This guy is their best player. You do what you have to do. He deserves to be the highest paid defensive lineman in football at this point in time. Just get it done. Get it done quickly. The price is only going to go up every time another high-end defensive lineman ends up getting a contract. You're going to end up paying more anyway. So I think just get it out of the way. He deserves it. There's no doubt about that. Just get it done, Rams. You've got enough issues. You don't want one that can easily be avoided wrecking your franchise. And I suppose this is kind of news. Apparently there's some word last week that Sam Darnold may actually be staying in college. If so, fair enough. I would never blame a player for that. I think overall it probably would help his draft stock for the following year, barring an injury or poor performance. Well, it might not. I mean, if he has a really good season this year, I think if you're going to be projected to be the first overall pick, you kind of just have to come out. But overall, it might help his career if he stays in. We have seen players who've spent longer in college tend to adapt to the NFL a little bit quicker. That experience is experience, even if it is at a lower level. It would be real tough on the teams, I think, that are going to be poor this year, because it is looking like a good class with him on top. If you take Darnold out of that class, it all of a sudden becomes a lot more questionable at this point in time. So we'll see what happens there. It's certainly a story worth keeping an eye on. He's going to be, one of the big stories in college football this season. Of that, I've got no doubt. So now we will head to the top 10 list of wide receivers currently playing in the NFL. A few honourable mentions that I'll throw in at the end, actually, because otherwise it's a bit of a spoiler. You might be hoping to see one of these guys on the list. So we'll hop in with my player at number 10, and that is Doug Baldwin of the Seattle Seahawks, who may be the most underrated player at the position in the league. I genuinely dread to think what the Seahawks passing game would look like without him. You've got him and Jimmy Graham are somewhat reliable. I don't mind Tyler Lockett, but Baldwin is the one reliable player that Russell Wilson has. They've got a very good connection. A lot of those plays where Wilson enters the scramble drill, he ends up finding Baldwin at the end of them. He's maybe not the most physically talented player on this list. Well, in fact, he certainly isn't. Doesn't appear to be that fast, but he gets open, he's quick, he can go deep, he's got very good hands, and he's very, very dangerous after the catch. I think that's his greatest asset. As I say, he is a number one. I think he proved that last season in particular when this Seahawks offense went through large space where it really struggled. And that wasn't really on him, it was an offensive line that struggled and a bordering on non-existent run game. So I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's a fantastic player, well deserving of being on this list. Coming in at number 9, one of the youngest receivers on the list, Amari Cooper. Only been in the league 2 years. He's pretty much been, I think, what most people were expecting coming out of college, being selected as highly as he was. A very polished route runner, very quick. Kind of reminds me of AJ Green, if he reminds me of anybody, his game. I don't think he's quite on that level. He's not quite as dominating a player as AJ Green at this point. He does tend to disappear for stretches of games. But in one-on-one coverage, he's very difficult to cover. Very precise route runner, very quick. Good hands. Kind of an all-round type player. Doesn't necessarily have one skill other than his route running that really jumps out at you, but he does everything at a pretty high level. He should only continue to get better, in particular as he grows with Derek Carr. I expect a big season from him next year. This offense is loaded, and I expect him to be the centerpiece of this team's passing game once again. Coming in at number 8 on the list, this is probably a little low considering the guy's skill set and his overall ability. But based on last season, just the way the offense ran, it's hard to really put him too much higher. And that is Dez Bryant of the Cowboys. This is, your prototypical number 1, I think, in today's NFL. I think you want to have one of the big body guys. If you look at touchdown numbers, which, whilst I'm not a huge fan of statistics, I believe the ability to get touchdowns is a big one. Every team needs a guy that can get them. Dez is one of those. The big receivers on those fade routes. It's a weapon you have to have. He's a great blocker. Certainly valid in that offense in particular. Fantastic after the catch. Really does turn into a running back with his power, ability to get jump balls. Faster than he should be for a guy that size. Makes tough catches. As I say, he could easily be higher on this list. He's pretty much just lower down because of the way the Cowboys run that offense. But I think this is one of the most dominant players in the league when everything's going his way. Excuse me. Fantastic overall player. And again, I expect his numbers to go up as Dak Prescott throws the ball a bit more, becomes more accustomed to playing with him. Coming in next at number 7, we've got Jordy Nelson of the Green Bay Packers. Him and Aaron Rodgers may have the best chemistry of any tandem in the league. Some of the pinpoint, that patented back shoulder fade that they do is just incredible. Nelson faster than people think. Very, very good route runner. Much like with Doug Baldwin, he's got that sixth sense of his quarterback when he's on the scramble drill. Very, very good hands. He's great at the boundary catches. Does a lot of things well. And as we saw, when he wasn't quite healthy at the start of the season, and when he's been missing, this Packers passing attack doesn't quite look the same. So he's just through his subtraction, you get to see the effect he has. Even if when you watch the tape, he's not necessarily the most dominating looking athlete on the field. Incredibly productive. And just every week, he's the guy you have to focus on the most when you play against the Packers. Coming in next at number 6, I've been a bit bold here and kind of gone against what I've said with Dez, but I've gone with DeAndre Hopkins. 2 years ago, I think he had one of the best receiver seasons I've seen, with that unholy trinity of Tom Savage, Brian Hoyer and Ryan Mallett throwing him the ball. Last year, it turns out it can get worse than that in Brock Osweiler. As a result, his numbers suffered, but this guy is just a heck of a player. One of the best jump ball receivers in the league, great at making contested catches, can get open deep. He's a good route runner for a guy his size, and just the ability to make contested catches in today's game is essential. And I think he may do it about as well as anybody. Jump balls, can really, again, this is one of the premier number 1 type guys in the league. I expect to see him continue to get better as this passing attack develops. Hopefully it does for him under Deshaun Watson. Maybe another slow season, of course, with a rookie quarterback likely taking snaps, but I do think he's one of the hardest weapons to plan for in the league at this point in time. Coming in at number 5, we've got possibly the most hyped name on here in Odell Beckham Jr. of the New York Giants. He's just electric in terms of his ability to run and make cuts. Maybe the best sort of change of direction player in the league at this point in time. I'm not sure how you're meant to cover him one-on-one. Of course, we've all seen the absurd one-handed catches. He does have a few more drops than you hear reported. I think he of course is a very emotional player, and we have seen that can have an impact on his overall game. But at the end of the day, without him, much like when I was discussing Doug Baldwin, he was the Giants' offense for stretches of last season. Who knows how they wouldn't have made the playoffs without him. That much is for sure. You can't cover him one-on-one. He's just too fast, too quick. Very dangerous with the ball in his hands with that speed and quickness. He can make guys look bad after the catch. And he's, immediately, since he stepped on the NFL field, been one of the premier weapons in the game. I think if he can just keep himself on a bit more of an even keel on the football field, he's got the potential to be higher up on this list. Coming in at number 4, we've got Mike Evans of the Buccaneers. Came into the league the same year as Odell Beckham. Bit of a, it may be a spoiler, but I have a preference, as I said earlier, for the big receivers. I think they're more dangerous, difficult to stop. I think you can game plan better to stop a smaller receiver, whilst they can, torch guys one-on-one. The big power receivers, like your Dez's and your Mike Evans, just that jump ball ability is so dangerous. The threat they give you in the red zone is essential. Last year, Evans just improved in every facet. In year 2, he was a productive player for the Buccaneers, but he had countless drops, and some of them were easy ones. Last year, he improved as a route runner, and for a guy that size to be as quick and crisp as he was a big improvement and very impressive. Made some of the most difficult catches of in the league last year. His highlight reel was incredibly impressive. Again, carried that Buccaneers offense. Beyond him, like Cameron Brate and Adam Humphries contributed a reasonable amount, but without Mike Evans, this team likely would have been a mess. 12 touchdowns, great red zone threat, great run blocker. Only real thing, doesn't do a huge amount after the catch at this point, but it's a small hole to pick in what was a fantastic season for him. Coming in at number 3, a player who unfortunately had his streak of 1,000-yard seasons to begin a career ended, AJ Green. And he was in the midst of his best season statistically. He's been dominant from day one. Probably when I was evaluating him coming out of college, he was, I thought, the cleanest, safest looking wide receiver prospect I'd seen personally, and that was simply because he was always open in college, and frankly not much has changed in the NFL. He's such a crisp and clean and sudden route runner. I think he runs the best double moves in the entire league, that he just makes guys look bad. He can makes difficult catches. He's good after the catch. In terms of all-round ability, he might be the best overall receiver in terms of he can do everything at a high level. He's got the speed to get deep. He's good after the catch. He can jump out of the building. And he's just incredible to watch. Again, this was a team, when he was healthy last year, he was the offense for the most part. He was going absolutely nuts on teams. And, I just think he is just the definition of reliable at that position. Just a heck of a player. Never quite seems to get the amount of credit he deserves, which is a shame. But yeah, heck of a player. Coming in at number 2, I'm sure you could all guess who the first 2 players on the list were. It's kind of a given at this point in the NFL. Number 2, I've got Antonio Brown of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Numbers went down a little last year. I've been pretty open in my opinion on this. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger had a particularly good second half of the season. We saw that team getting carried by Le'Veon Bell, but still his numbers were very good. He was, before that, in the midst of the most dominating spell statistically, I think, in league history, wasn't he? Certainly would have been close to. A lot of the stuff I said about Odell applies here. This guy's just too quick for most corners. You can't cover him one-on-one. His acceleration and quickness out of breaks is too much. He's a very savvy route runner. Him and Roethlisberger have a great understanding. In terms of going deep and just torching guys, this is one of the best players in the league. He just runs so well. So smooth. Has very good hands, great concentration. He's a small guy, but he's just the amount of throws that he gets his hands on and catches that you're normally seeing made by big receivers is frankly incredible because of his body control. You have to pay a lot of attention to this guy, as I say. You just cannot cover him one-on-one. A heck of a player. And he comes in at number 2, leaving, of course, at number 1, Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons. This is, the heir to the freak wide receiver throne that was previously held by Calvin Johnson, and before that Randy Moss, the guy who's just that big and that fast and that quick that really shouldn't be. Last year was banged up, but when he was on the field, he was just a heck of a weapon. His body control is incredible. His speed at that size is just fantastic. You can't cover him 1-on-1 because he can outrun most guys. He's more physical and just bigger than most guys. He'll make incredibly difficult catches. He's great after the catch. That's what I think separates him from some of the other big receivers on the list. Des Bryant's great after the catch, but not quite on Julio's level. And yeah, last year he was just unstoppable for stretches of games. Matt Ryan could just pretty much throw to him at will, and it would work out. You can give him jump balls, you can throw him, short stuff. That's something you don't often see with the big receivers, these little screens that they end up being so effective with. There's no real hole in this guy's game whatsoever. I think if you wanted to design a receiver for the modern game, this pretty much is what they end up looking like. And that's why he comes in with my number one spot. So I'll just throw out the honourable mentions quickly. T.Y. Hilton, he was the one I felt the worst about leaving off the list. Really wanted to put him on there, but as I say, very competitive list. And so yeah, that one stung because I'm a huge fan of his. Beyond that, there are other guys I was looking at. Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, they were both considered. I actually prefer Sanders of the two, which is odd considering I say I have a preference for the big receivers in today's game, but I just think Sanders is the more reliable weapon. Other guys, who else was there? Brandon Marshall, perhaps last year was a bit of a down season, but he was certainly worth considering. Jarvis Landry and Julian Edelman in terms of slot receivers. If I wanted to honour a slot receiver, I would have thrown those two in. But alas, the list, there's too many good receivers for me to just put guys on there just because I want to represent slot players, especially with how much guys move around these days. But they were the guys that I think I had the most problems leaving off. So there you have it. Another episode, another week gone. Getting closer to the NFL season now. As you know, if you've been checking out the show, season previews are currently ongoing. Yesterday was the Colts, the day before that the Cowboys. Check those out Monday through Thursday for the next few weeks. I'll be going through every team in the league. Next week's weekly review, I'll be finishing up my top 10 players. I've covered every position now except the big one, the quarterback position. So I'll be breaking down my list of the top 10 quarterbacks currently in the league then. And as ever, if you've enjoyed the show, like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. It's all greatly appreciated. If you ever want to talk football, we've got the comment section below on YouTube. Find us on Facebook, Cover Zero. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to discuss these things. What do you think of the list? Let me know. Happy to have that conversation. And thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.